Hi, and welcome into another episode of a spotlight on entrepreneurship. And our skills workshop today is all about lead magnets. And this is something that I am very curious about. I'm going to be taking lots of notes, and just want to make sure that as we roll through 2024, that we are doing everything possible as entrepreneurs to generate interest and get those communications going with those potential clients. So I want to welcome in Kristina Witmer, president of Witmer Group, and she has been working with organizations for over 13 years now, just helping them with their inbound strategies. So we are thrilled to have Kristina join us today and share her expertise around this. So, Kristina, hi and welcome in.
Hi, thank you. I'm excited about this chat that we're going to have and a discussion on lead magnets. So, Happy New Year.
Yeah, happy New Year to you too. And I think one of our challenges, right, is that we can't always be out there talking to everybody, and only so many hours in the day to do networking and that sort of thing, right? To really be educating people. And so we really have to rely on our website to carry a load for us, right? So, um, I mean, what are the things that we need to be thinking about when we're starting to plan our marketing strategy, and how do we incorporate these lead magnets as part of that?
Let's find out, shall we?
Okay.
I'm going to share my screen. I've got about 11 slides. So just a short sort of walkthrough on some of the high points of how to make this work. So let's see, you should see my screen now. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Um, so something I just, it's interesting though, because the key you mentioned, how to make your website work for you. And I think that's what this is going to be all about, is like how just one other way that you can find to start to build your pipeline so that when you're busy servicing clients and doing other things, you can actually hopefully be building that pipeline too. So let's dive into it. And please ask questions if you have some thoughts, because we can make this, very interactive. We can also do a specific example of what lead magnet might we develop for a specific case if you think it's beneficial. So I'll leave that up to you.
Great.
So, welcome, introduction. You introduced me, so thank you for that. I will say my evolution has definitely, gone quite through the gamut, because there was a point where when you're doing advertising and different types of outreach, you're not thinking about this pipeline of sales. Like, you're not thinking about the early stage. So the more I got into inbound strategies and marketing strategies and communication and content strategies, the more this became a very important factor. So what I'm going to talk about today is just how important it is to get the quality leads and some easy ways to do that, like to get quality versus not quality. And then also just that pipeline for long-term growth, because when you get busy delivering what you've sold or what you service, your sales often slows. And so you have this up and down constant with how things are moving. So this is all about the pipeline. So
Fantastic.
first, I just want to explain what lead magnets are. And there's other downloadable content. I think there's another term people use. It's escaping me right now, but lead magnets are how I have used this term most recently. So, first of all, what is it? It's something that you offer to a prospective customer that is of value, and also shows them that you have this expertise, that you're a trusted source. And I'm going to show you some examples of exactly how we get to this. But it's something that you give that has value, that someone wants, right? And they're willing to give you maybe a little bit of information, maybe just an email address, maybe a name, whatever it is, in exchange for that. But you're not going to harass them and try to sell them right then. you're going to understand that what you gave them helps them at a certain point. So it may be 3 months before they're ready to talk to you, and you need to understand that. And once you do, you can sort of just help them and be there when they are ready and just sort of stay top of mind. So that's the definition and the purpose. There's a few examples that we'll walk through as far as you can have checklists, you can have an ebook, you can have a webinar, anything like that is actually can be a lead magnet for you. Anything that helps you gather leads, but it's more magnetic. It's more of that, like, depending on the power of the magnet is how fast they might be drawn to you. Also, just how this can excel your trust and credibility, because when you give value without asking for something, you actually look good, right? And then overall, the goal is to drive sales and conversions. This is a different path than your active sales outreach is. So there's two things I want to talk about before I show you some lead magnets. One is you have to know who you're talking to in order to develop a lead magnet. So if you have not done personas yet, buyer personas, then I would encourage you to take a look at these and develop one or two for your audience. And as you're looking at these, there's a link here. I'll share this PowerPoint with you as a PDF afterwards if you would like. But I have a guide that shows you how to create this, the buyer personas. But have you ever done the personas, or have you developed them too much a little bit? I think we talked about
Yes.
before.
Yeah, I have for this business for me, as well as for working with our teams in the recruitment advertising space to develop personas for help clients develop their candidate personas. So I know how important this is, and I know sometimes that this is something that a lot of people step over in the process before they launch a marketing plan. They don't necessarily do all of this. That's so critical, right?
Yeah, and so once we, like, internally, when we support a client, we are helping them we have a blueprint that we create that includes our team, what their goals are, what hashtags we're using, but it also includes these personas. And the best part is, once we have these personas, the client approves them, and it becomes, it's like, CEO Andrew, like you see him, you see his problems, you kind of understand how much time he had, like you really get a sense. So the best thing is when we, I work with writers, I work with creative people. When I'm asking a writer to write a blog, I say, you know what, I want you to write about this. I want you to talk to CEO Andrew. And so it really helps anyone that you're working with really give you a better product, because they can visualize, they can feel who they're talking about. So personas are important. At least have one or two, and then you can, you may not need more than one or two, but just validate them and improve them over time.
Absolutely.
So the other piece before you look at your lead magnet is the buyer's journey. And I do find this one challenging, especially if you've tried things and when you look at your clients, you get them from all different places, but it really is important to try to figure this out and to try to improve this over time. Now, there's typical stages would be awareness, consideration, and decision. So before someone starts to work with you or chooses your business, they had these moments, right? Awareness, maybe they figured out they had a problem, right? They're spending too much time on their own bookkeeping, right? And so they need to look for an outsourced solution, like whatever it might be. There's an awareness of the pain, right? Of the problem. And then eventually it becomes to a point where they're considering who to choose, right? Okay, I know I have this problem. Who should I go to? What should I compare? How should I compare these people? Even if you go back to awareness, they may not understand exactly what the problem is. They just know there's a problem. So you have to help people in each stage. And this is where you start to look at what lead magnet should you create based on the stage. So just some questions to ask yourself as you're trying to figure this out. I do find it quite challenging to develop these, but the more it's a puzzle that you fill in over time. But for example, if some prospect is trying to figure out if you're the right person versus a competitor, they're trying to figure out how risky is it to do business with you, right? So you have to look at case studies, online reviews, testimonials, very specific things you want to provide them to help you. If they're trying to, as also evaluate you amongst all the competition as they're trying to whittle down an early stage of possibilities, your listings in online and SEO, your PR, your content's really going to be important on how that sways them. If they're trying to figure out if they can afford you, then you look at ROI, you've got sales collateral. If they're trying to figure out if they need you, right, that's back to awareness. That's about your website positioning. How are you what problems are you solving and who are you helping? So when you start to break this down, then you can start to say, okay, my person in the awareness stage, they know they don't have time. They know they can't forecast money. And I'm just going back to the bookkeeper CPA for some reason, but they know they can't forecast money, but they don't know they need me, this awesome bookkeeper tax prep person that can help them. So you have to figure out what it is that solves that problem. So hopefully this makes sense, but these are sort of two things that the personas and the journey will really help you nail the lead magnet.
Can you have more than one on the site
Yes,
simultaneously?
absolutely. Yeah. I do
Okay.
recommend you have one sort of, if you think of the structure of your homepage of your site, I recommend you have something that says really clearly what you do and who you service, like who's your target. And then underneath that is a great place for a lead magnet. As you develop more, you can rotate them out, you can change them. I have different lead magnets on different pages. Someone goes to services page, I might have a different one, homepage, just depends where they're at.
So that's good to know because I think sometimes people would be thinking of maybe only doing one at a time and not wanting to, um, I guess, try to get the same people, confused about filling out forms on different pages or
Right.
whatever. So what's been your experience with that? People will just automatically only complete the form once on the site, depending on
Typically,
them, or
yeah, I would say typically, like my goal would be, try to develop one per quarter, and then after the first year you have four, and then try to see which one is your best perform, maybe which is your worst performer, and maybe try to replace that next year. Like
okay.
I would, because if you think about it, you could have something on a LinkedIn company profile, and maybe that's about how to, what just you might look for different, and I'll show you some examples of ones that you'll start to think of how you might use them. But you can start to put them in blogs, link them in blogs if they're relevant to that topic. You could put them in social media posts if they're related to that. So you start to think of your content strategy, what you're talking about, and really think about, I have 5 lead magnets. One is about content, one is about SEO, one is about email marketing. Like as you think of, you have those. Well, if you're talking about that subject, you're probably
Hmm.
going to encourage people to go to that place.
Right. Right. That's true. Okay.
So short guidelines before we get into a couple examples here. Just to recap, align lead magnets with the buyer persona in the journey. So take a look at that as your map. Try to figure out what content fits within that. Tailor it to address specific needs. The more specific, the better, right? So, and one rule I would say here is that if you can Google whatever, so say you have an idea of what to create, and if you can Google it and find it for free really, really easily, it's not going to be that valuable because people aren't going to want to put their name and email address in exchange for it. But if you develop something very specific, very helpful, RFP tool to help people choose vendors, a checklist of questions to ask on a one of the vendor calls, like help them, right? You've got to help them without expecting that it's necessarily going to come to you, but it will pay off in the end. And then relevance, right? So just really look at the relevance, and that's where you really need to understand who you're talking to. So I've got just a couple more slides and we'll talk through some examples. So typical types of lead magnets: white papers, ebooks, webinars, workshops, templates, checklists, tools. So when you think of those things, I love checklists. This is an example here. And actually I do have go ahead and click out so we can see it, the whole thing. This is a webinar checklist, right? So pretty cool. It's a checklist that you might follow for webinars. I'll just shrink it a little bit here. And it's going to break it down into sections. You can actually check them off as you do them if you want to make this an ongoing guide. And then, you know, gives you some timing ideas. And then it tells you, hey, whoops, sorry. It tells you, you know, who did it and, you know, just sort of taking the credit. But my goal here is to truly help you in this process. That's it. Like, you might take this and run, but it's always me, and it's subtle and it's my logo, but this is really supposed to be helpful as possible.
That's great.
So you really have to
I
think
think
about people.
that is part of the challenge too, is not wanting to be too like just at the surface level, but really digging down a little bit deeper. I think some people are conflicted in, well, if I give out all of the information, they won't want to do business with me because I'll have given away a lot of my expertise.
Right.
But it, many people, marketing professionals say that doesn't stop them from doing business with you. It almost makes them want to do more business with you because you've proven your expertise, right?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And then, so if you start, you're thinking, okay, a webinar, for me, marketing agency, having a marketing director, they might need something like this, right? So it makes sense. I'm sort of helping this person. So let's say my target is, I work for law firms, right? Like, that's my niche. Like, that's who I focus on. Well, I could easily take this and make it a webinar checklist for law firms, add a couple of law specific like resources, change my language a little bit just to talk about how you really start to break apart the person you're talking to. And that's where, if you don't have a niche, if you haven't niched down enough, you'll start to feel the pain of this, because it can be frustrating. But everybody says that niching down is the way to go. Like, the agency that serves all things to everyone, it just doesn't work like it used to, because there's so many specialists and so many specific skills out there. So anyway, this is one example. And so, basic characteristics: value proposition, solve a specific problem, easy to consume, actionable, relevant. So in this case of the checklist, and let me go back to the thing, having a designer make those little boxes that you can put a check in just takes a little bit of extra time, but how cool is that, right? How functional and usable is that, right? What's funny too is, I actually had a client ask me for this. That's what triggered me to make this as content for other people. So pay attention to the people you work with, listen to their needs, because that may be something that you can use in your sales. So for this one specifically, it was just like, oh, I'll do it and I'll make it really cool, give it to the client, and then I'll use it for my own purposes as well. So it really had a twofold benefit.
Fantastic.
So, tools. After you have your landing pages, or I'm sorry, your lead magnets created, it's important to figure out what you're going to do with it. And you talked about where you're going to put it. Generally speaking, these are the ideal things to have. A landing page. Now, we are HubSpot partners, so there's even free HubSpot accounts you can get. Landing page, just having a page that has a picture of what they're getting, a form, quick description. They can click and download whatever you're offering them. So that's your landing page. Try to make it as pretty as possible, right? There's Canva tools, very inexpensive. Sorry, my throat's getting dry. Canva can make a nice PDF real cute and have your data in it. Have your form, know what's happening when the form's submitted. Is it alerting you? And then social media sharing, like this can be a regular social media share all the time. And then website integration, a lot of times you have pop-ups for stuff like this. All these are key. And I went and found 2 examples. I just found these. These are not mine. But you'll see if you go search for guides, templates, things like that, you can find all kinds of examples that you can copy and tweak for yourself. You can download these or you can just get the ideas. But Muckrack is a PR agency. So they have a template for communications planning. I didn't download that yet. I just thought it'd be nice to take a look at them. But I guarantee you it's a multi-page document that will help me make my plan. So their thought is that maybe eventually I'll be big enough to afford a company like that or need a company like that. So that's a straightforward. And then for Sage Frog, I just found them. I don't really know them either, but guide to B2B event marketing. Pretty specific. So these are good examples for landing pages. Quick logo, quick form, quick statement, straightforward. So, final thoughts. If you want to dive into one specific, we can after this. But my final thoughts is, how are you going to measure success? Are you counting your downloads? If so, if you have more than one, are you going to count them and compare them? Are you going to look at who downloaded them and see which ones were Gmail and which were a company? Just try to find out how you're measuring success for this and keep learning. Where will people be able to access this? So they'll go to a place, ideally a landing page. But where will you, communicate it? I have on my LinkedIn profile in my header, I created a graphic. Now it doesn't link, but it has a short URL that goes straight to the landing page I want it to, that is a lead magnet. I put it in my LinkedIn profile, put it in the company, put it on Google My Business. Where are you going to put it? Share it as much as you can. Especially because these are people who may not know you, don't know you, and this is an easy way for them to get to know you without any risk for themselves. And I put how you measure success twice, so it's important, I guess.
Yeah.
So then the only other one is, what do you do after it's downloaded? And that's tricky. You need to understand where you think this person is, right? Are they really early stage? And you don't always know if they're qualified. Can they afford you? That kind of stuff. Because, you could have students, you could have all kinds of people doing this stuff, but you have to go in with goodwill of providing this tool and then just try to have a follow-up process. It could be a couple weeks. Hope you found that helpful. Do you need anything else? Could be that simple.
Yeah, I think that is part of the process, making sure that you do follow up and that it doesn't just be, okay, well, they took that, right, whatever that downloadable document was. But to have that additional outreach after the fact. And I normally, when I've done it in the past on my site, I've usually tried to reach out to them within 24 hours after they downloaded to just say, you know, thanks for finding, my downloadable document. And if you have any questions or if this didn't hit the mark, open to having a free conversation with you and just, trying to get some sort of communication going if the time was right.
Yeah.
And then if not, just trying to periodically send them something else of value further down the road, but
absolutely
not really jumping into a sales process right away, like you were saying.
Yeah. And if you're a little bit of the buyer's journey and you see that they're early stage, then maybe you can provide them something mid-stage a month later, right? Like
Right.
That's a great opportunity. And so this is to sort of wrap up. And actually, these are 3 lead magnets that I have. So their links are here. You're welcome to take a look at just the process of it and the download. And, so ebooks are interesting because, people usually have a need and they want it now, right? Like if it's a
Yeah.
checklist or whatever. So they're either going to use it fast or not. And that's where you can have the most, quality follow-up conversation. But, and the buyer persona creation guide might be helpful to for those who haven't sort of gone through that process yet.
Yeah. No, this is great. I really appreciate all of this. I think it's valuable information for us to play with and to really figure out what's going to resonate with our
Mm-hmm.
own individual audiences, right?
Yeah,
And
for sure.
hopefully this will spur some conversations within our membership group just about how some may have already used this type of strategy and how did it work for them? What did they learn from their experience?
Right.
you know and I'm of the mindset that if you try something once and it doesn't work, it doesn't mean that you just completely abandon it. You might just want to look at tweaking it a
Mm-hmm.
little bit and trying it again,
Yeah. No, and
because I
marketing
definitely think,
nowadays is all about learning, trying it, learning it, tweaking it, and then rolling out like a sort of moderated version of it. So